A chilling secret has finally cracked open. The night Senzo Meyiwa died was not random chaos. It was a calculated betrayal from people he trusted most. Today, we uncover how that betrayal unfolded, why Longwe Twala's actions worsened the tragedy, and the damning details investigators buried for years, until now. If you could ask just one question to anyone involved that night, what would it be and why? Drop it in the comments before we reveal the most shocking twist. It was a quiet Sunday evening in Vosloris, the kind of night where families gathered indoors as the air cooled and the township settled into its weekend rhythm. Inside the modest house belonging to Kelly Khumalo's mother, laughter mingled with a hum of casual conversation. Senzo Meyiwa, captain of the Orlando Pirates and beloved figure in South African football, was there not only as a guest, but as a man caught between two lives, one with his wife, and another with the singer whose home he was visiting. Nobody in that room could have imagined that within hours, a single gunshot would silence one of the brightest talents the nation had ever produced. The sense of safety inside those four walls would evaporate in seconds, replaced by panic, confusion, and the kind of chaos that later becomes fertile ground for lies. When Longwe Twala walked through that door, the night's energy shifted in a way that only those present could truly feel. He wasn't just another guest. He was the son of a prominent music producer, someone who grew up with influence and recognition. His presence wasn't loud, but it was noticeable, the kind that makes others adjust themselves slightly, watching and waiting. In the intricate web of relationships in that room, his arrival added another layer of tension, one that would only become clear when tragedy struck. There were unspoken dynamics at play, rivalries, alliances, and silent grudges, all floating beneath the surface, hidden from the casual observer. What happened next would turn Longwe from a background figure into one of the most scrutinized names in a murder investigation. By the time that night unfolded, Kelly Khumalo's star was rising higher than ever. Her voice commanded stages, her name sold headlines, and her image was carefully sculpted to balance vulnerability with strength. In that Vosloris house, she wasn't just the host's daughter. She was a gravitational center. People leaned toward her. Conversations bent around her mood, and her approval seemed to hold weight. Senzo was not immune to that pull, nor were the others present. In that enclosed space, Kelly's influence was almost invisible in its subtlety, yet undeniable in effect. When pressure came, that influence would play a role not just in shaping events, but in shaping the story told afterward. When the first police reports reached the media, they carried a neat, almost cinematic explanation, an armed robbery gone wrong. It was a kind of narrative the public could easily digest. Strangers enter, chaos erupts, a hero falls. But it didn't take long for cracks to appear in that version. Items of value remained untouched. The supposed robbers seemed almost selective in their violence. And those who had been in the house told eerily similar accounts, as though reading from the same page. For some, it was a sign that the story had been rehearsed long before any official statement was given. For others, it was an indication that the true motive had nothing to do with theft. As the weeks passed, investigators and journalists began piecing together timelines on the statements given by those present. What emerged was a tangle of contradictions. Details that changed from one interview to the next, memories that seemed to fade or sharpen depending on who was asking the questions. Some witnesses placed themselves in certain rooms at crucial moments, only to later shift their locations entirely. Others insisted they saw weapons in the hands of strangers, while different accounts claimed no such thing. Inconsistencies like these are the death of truth, and in this case, they fed suspicion that the real story was being hidden behind a carefully coordinated front. When forensic experts examined the fatal shot, their findings added another layer of doubt to the official robbery narrative. The angle of the bullet, its entry point, and the distance from which it was fired all suggested a confrontation far more personal than a chaotic struggle with intruders. Ballistics do not care for human emotion. They tell their story with precision, even when that story contradicts the living. What the evidence implied was that Senzo's killer was close, very close, and that the shooting was not the random spray of a startled thief, but something far more deliberate. In the confusion immediately after the gunshot, one detail stood out to investigators and to the public. Longwe Twala was said to have left the house almost instantly. Accounts differ on whether he ran or walked, whether he offered any explanation at all, but the fact remains, in the earliest stages of the investigation, the South African Police Service made decisions that would haunt the case for years. Critical evidence from the crime scene was either mishandled or outright ignored. Items were moved before being photographed. Statements were taken in haste without cross-checking, and witnesses were allowed to communicate freely before formal questioning. It was as if the first 48 hours, the period most crucial for solving any homicide, were squandered. Some former officers quietly admitted that pressure from high places may have dictated how the case was handled, while others claimed it was simply incompetence. But to the families seeking justice, the result was the same: truth delayed and perhaps permanently distorted. If this investigation has you questioning everything you thought you knew, now is the moment to subscribe and share. The more people who see this, the harder it becomes for anyone to bury the truth. In the weeks before Senzo's death, the cracks in his personal life had begun to widen. His marriage to Mandisa Mackay was under strain, while his relationship with Kelly Khumalo was becoming increasingly public and controversial. Friends recalled heated arguments, whispered accusations, and the kind of emotional volatility that often precedes rash decisions. On the surface, Senzo's life looked charmed: fame, fortune, and love. Beneath that surface, competing loyalties and wounded pride were eroding the trust between the people closest to him. That tension was more than emotional background noise. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark. Longwe was not just a name on the guest list. He was the son of Chico Twala, a music industry heavyweight whose influence stretched deep into South African entertainment circles. Chico's reputation for protecting those in his orbit was well known, and many wondered how far he might go to shield his own family from scandal. This connection added a shadow over the investigation. Would the truth about Longwe's actions at night ever be allowed to surface if powerful figures stood to lose from it? In cases where influence and justice collide, truth often becomes the first casualty. As journalists dug deeper, whispers of cash changing hands began to surface. Allegations emerged that certain individuals may have received money in the months following Senzo's death, payments with no clear explanation. Some claimed these were debts repaid. Others called them gestures of support during a hard time. But to those piecing together, the truth about Senzo Meyiwa's death was never going to be a simple story of chance and misfortune. From the moment a gun was fired, a wall of silence began to rise, built with lies, reinforced by influence, and guarded by fear. Longwe Twala's presence, Kelly Khumalo's influence, the inconsistencies in witness accounts, and the glaring failures in the investigation all form threads in a web that still stretches across nearly a decade. This is no longer just about a single night in Vosloorus. It is about the way power bends justice, about how fame can shield as much as exposes, and about the unrelenting fight of those who refuse to let Senzo's name fade into another cold case file. The stage robbery theory may have been the first chapter, but every new piece of evidence has rewritten the ending, pointing toward betrayal from within. Senzo's story is a warning that the dead cannot speak, and so the living must demand answers. Until every lie is stripped away, and every player in that house is forced to tell the whole truth, justice will remain unfinished. And unfinished justice is not justice at all.